So in our last video, we showed you how to shoot S-Log3, and today we're gonna show you how to grade it. Now, because we showed you 3 different ways to shoot it, we're gonna show you how to edit each one of those ways. And with each different way, it's gonna get a little bit more complicated. Now, like I said, everything you see here is free to obtain by yourself from the Sony website, so stay tuned. Now, before we get started, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more comparisons, tutorials, and some potential giveaways coming up to our YouTube subscribers. So I'm gonna be doing all of this in Adobe Premiere. Now, all these techniques that I'm using are gonna be available in most professional video editors. They are not specific to Adobe Premiere, but the exact ways in which you implement them may be a little bit different depending on your software. So let's jump in. Like I said, I've already got all of my LUTs loaded up onto my computer. All you need to do there is, we'll have that link in the description, like I said. You just need to download them, put them in a place on your computer that you can find. And when we go to select our LUTs on the footage, you just kind of follow the path to that LUT and select it there, okay? All right, let's go. Okay, so we have our first shot here. As you'll recall, this is the one we used, the reference LUT. Now, as you can see, this does not look like the footage did on the back of the camera. This is flat, it's S-Log3, it's everything we wanted it to be. So all we need to do with this footage to get it to look like it did on the back of our camera is we go to our Lumetri panel. We're gonna go to Input LUT. We're going to find where we've put our LUTs, and we're gonna do the, in this case, it's the SLS, you can see it. I'm not gonna try and do all those numbers and letters, but you wanna do the S-Log3 Cine, the 3C stands for Cine, because that's what we were using. So you just simply turn it on, apply it, and there we go. We've got a beautiful looking image. I can see if I can pull up my scopes here so you can kind of get an idea that, you know, we've got our brights are bright, they have detail, our darks are dark, but they still have detail, and largely everything looks good. Colors may be a tad off, but this is nothing that we can't adjust very, very easily, just either using our little eyedropper tool here, because the wall behind her is white. Click that, boom, there you go. So everything looks wonderful and great. So getting it back to why that first method is so easy, this is all you have to do. You throw on your LUT, you might color correct depending on what you need, and then you can go in and grade it further later. Now we're gonna do more grading with the other shots, so we're gonna leave this one as is. Method 2. This is the one where we use the zebras to get kind of a really good skin tone on her face. So as you can see already, this footage is much darker. That's because we brought our exposure down to match what the zebras were kind of dictating there. So when we throw on just that same LUT, you're gonna notice it looks considerably darker, but her skin tones do look very good. They look, I mean, for lack of a better word, cinematic. I hate throwing around that word, but it does have kind of a cinematic look. Now, it might be a little hard to see in our screen recording here, but you will notice that if we kind of zoom in really, really far on just the kind of the wall there, you'll notice there's like a fair bit of noise, which isn't great. And this is one of the reasons why shooting the skin tone method isn't great for really bright, high key environments. The skin tone method works really the best when you are in dark situations where you're kind of already stretching the limits of your camera and you just want to make sure that those skin tones look good. And you can use that method so you know that, okay, the skin tones are going to be preserved. Everything else might be a little bit dark, might be a little bit muddy, but at least the person is going to look good. But this is something that we can still, you know, like I said, we can go in and we can grade it just a little bit. If I think it's a little bit dark, my preferred method is typically curves, but not always. It just depends, and you just go in, brighten it up just a hair, and now we get a little bit nicer of a look. Let's go ahead and do our little color correction here, and there we go. We've got a nice, beautiful image. But like I said, that noise might be a little bit of a problem. But that's why I like to use this third method probably more often than most of the other methods, because we're gonna get our best kind of signal to noise ratio while still having a lot of grading latitude. So this is where things get a tiny bit more complicated. This shot, you may not be able to tell, but it is quite a bit brighter than the previous shots. So we're gonna start like we normally do. We're gonna go in there with our input LUT and we're gonna see how that looks. So S-Log3, Cine 2709, and it doesn't look great. Now, you might be discouraged. You might be like, oh, well, no. You might get your footage in and be a little bit stressed out. Well, this is where Sony has some really incredible tools that you can use. And they are LUTs, but they are LUTs that you put before your main primary LUT. So in this case, we're gonna go back to this and we're gonna hit none. So we're back to our flat image. Now, you can do this a bunch of different ways. You can do this in the bins in Premiere, directly on the footage before you even put it on your timeline. What I'm gonna do is we're gonna do it all in one Lumetri instance, one effect on the clip. So we'll start with an input LUT, and these are what are called exposure offsets. So what that simply means is it takes your footage and decreases the exposure on it by up to 3 stops. Now, it doesn't just take every pixel and darken it. It is a little bit more complicated than that. And again, I don't want to get really into the weeds as to how that works, but that's part of the beauty of S-Log and the way that they've captured all that information is that they take an image that has 15 stops of dynamic range and they kind of squish it down, and then they allow you to kind of slide along this scale of about 3 stops. And it also goes the other way. You can increase exposure, but that is a surefire way to get unwanted noise in your image. So whenever you're shooting S-Log, if you are ever in doubt, just overexpose it. You're always gonna be a little better. So here we go. These are the S-Log3 exposure offsets. And I have already played with this footage, so I know where I'm gonna go with it. I'm gonna go for a -2. You might say that looks a lot like our skin tone method, and you'd be right. And it is about 2 stops difference on the actual camera exposure. So then we go to creative on the Lumetri tab. And again, you can do this using adjustment layers. You can do this, one in the footage in the bin, one on the timeline. It's however you want to. But this is what I typically do for most things. So we're gonna go to our LUTs. It might take a minute because we're kind of all over the place here. But then we take that LUT, and there you go. We get a very similar exposure to that skin tone method. And what you'll notice is, and it might be hard to see because again, this is a small screen and we are talking about really kind of faint levels of grain, but you'll notice that the image itself is just a little bit less noisy. And this is why this method is so powerful, especially for outdoors stuff, but any sort of high key environments, this is absolutely the way you're gonna wanna shoot. So we're gonna go back in here, we're gonna do something similar. We're gonna increase those mids just a little bit using our curves and get a little bit different of a look. But what you will find is that this is gonna give you the most flexibility, the most kind of bang for your buck. We can sit here, we can get really crazy with stuff, but I really wanna get to this kind of fun little trick that I discovered for outdoor footage and especially landscapes. So on the screen right now is this shot that we took from our Tamron 150 to 500 review. This is out on an island, bright. This is like maybe 10 o'clock, maybe 9:30, 10 in the day. We've got the sun in the scene, but looking at this, it really just looks like a beautiful shot. It looks like you're outside, you've got all these cowpokes and whatnot getting ready, and the sky is blue, the clouds are detailed, it's everything you want it to be. But this was not something that was attainable just by slapping a LUT on it and calling it good. So first I was using my zebras to gauge if anything was clipping. So as you might imagine, the sun was clipping, nothing else was clipping. So let me show you, to start off, just on our base footage, we have an exposure offset. So here's the initial footage as it came out of the camera and as I shot it. So first, we did a simple 1-stop reduction in the exposure. So already we are seeing it's already kind of resembling what we were expecting. Now, if you look at the shot after we apply our primary LUT, you'll see, oh, it's good, but that sky is definitely a lot brighter. I also want to point out, this is another, I'm not using the same LUT that we were using in the previous ones. I'm using another one that can be found on the Sony's website. This is an ARRI look. It's supposed to emulate ARRI cameras, and it's one of my personal favorites. I find that the color accuracy is really, really good on it. It looks great. So you can just find that on the Sony website. We'll also have a link that'll be in that same link that'll have all the other stuff. So what I did was I took that footage, I added an adjustment layer that was only for the sky. So I just drew a mask to only cover the sky, and I put on that adjustment layer an additional stop of exposure offset. So you can see it there. It is covering, just the sky. There's a little bit of feathering over everything. The nice thing was that there were some kind of low level, like kind of fog and mist and stuff kind of in the distance. So that kind of helps blur the line of this mask. So what happens is when you throw that on there, then suddenly that sky has a lot more detail and it kind of pops a little bit more. Now you can get really extreme with this, but this is going for a more natural look. And so I'll show you, I'll kind of turn it on and off, and you can see it kind of before and after. It's subtle, but it goes a long way without putting it in that sort of uncanny valley of crazy colors and whatnot. So there you go, that's a surefire way to get excellent footage and to grade it quickly. Now again, S-Log3 is incredibly flexible, and this is just scratching the surface of just some of the amazing things you can do with it. I really encourage you to go out there, try it out, and let that beautiful footage roll. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to take your camera out today. See you next time.